Hey everyone, welcome to Tangled Threads. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Let's go. Hello everyone, let me take you way back to the time when my wife Sarah and I had been together for many years, living in marital bliss. But as time ticked by, I began to feel a shift in the dynamics of our relationship. We had moved in together after our wedding, and up until this point, our love life was like a perfectly choreographed dance, sensual, harmonious, and fulfilling. Then, like a sudden change in the wind, Sarah began declining my advances. Every time I would try to initiate intimacy, she'd deftly dodge it, coming up with an endless array of reasons. Work, tiredness, even episodes of her favorite TV show. Anything seemed to take precedence over our once cherished closeness. This ongoing evasion began to wear me down, chipping away at my self-confidence bit by bit. Yet, I was too in love with her to walk away from what we had built together. So, after many months of rejection, I devised a plan, a way to get back at her, a sort of social experiment. I stopped asking for intimacy. I resolved to let her make the first move. I was driven partly by frustration, but more so by curiosity. I wanted to know how she would react when the tables were turned, and she was the one being denied the intimacy she sought. Almost immediately, her demeanor changed. The woman who had so consistently avoided my touch was suddenly asking for it. Her attempts were tentative at first, but soon she was making advances as passionately as she once had. Each time I declined, I watched as confusion, then annoyance, then outright anger clouded her features. My experiment had just begun when Sarah approached me one evening. We were on the couch, a comfortable silence enveloping us as we watched our favorite evening sitcom. Sarah was nestled against my side, her head resting on my shoulder. Without warning, she turned to me, her eyes glinting with a familiar spark that I hadn't seen in a while. "John," she purred, her fingers dancing lightly over my chest. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" I swallowed, my pulse quickening at her touch. But I remembered my resolve, the experiment I had committed to. "Sarah, I'm really tired tonight," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "Let's just watch the show, okay?" Her expression changed dramatically, surprise giving way to confusion, and then to anger. "Are you rejecting me?" she asked, her voice sharp as a whip. "After all this time that I've tried to initiate something, you're going to turn me down?" Her words cut through the air, slicing the silence into pieces. I looked at her, stunned at the sudden outburst. "Sarah, No!" She cut me off, her anger palpable. She jerked away from me, creating a physical distance that mirrored the emotional chasm between us. "You're tired. I get it. Fine." The rest of the evening was spent in tense silence, her anger radiating from her like heat from a flame. I felt a pang of guilt for my part in it, but I also knew that this was a crucial part of the journey we were on, whether she knew it yet or not. One day she asked me again, and in an impulsive decision to make my point further, I agreed. The anticipation in her eyes was palpable. But just as we were about to get intimate, my phone rang. I had set up a fake call beforehand, a prop in my plot of revenge. I apologized to her and hurriedly left the room, leaving her in a state of baffled disappointment. Later that night, when I returned home, I found her waiting for me. "I can't believe you did that, John," she said, her voice shaking with hurt. "You intentionally avoided intimacy. It felt terrible." I saw the perfect opportunity to make my point. I cut her off and said, "And now you know how I felt, Sarah. All those months when you dodged my attempts to get close, do you have any idea how it made me feel?" The shock in her eyes was evident. I hadn't spoken about the hurt I'd felt, thinking it was something I could bear silently. But in that moment, she knew exactly what her actions had led to. "If you continue to avoid our intimacy," I warned, "I won't hesitate to do this again." The words hung heavy in the room, and I watched her wrestle with the sudden understanding of what she'd put me through. In response, her gaze landed on my phone resting on the coffee table. With a swift motion, she snatched it up, her expression unreadable. "This," she spat, the edges of her words sharp with anger. "This is what ruined our moment." And without warning, she hurled my phone against the wall. The device shattered into a dozen pieces, echoing the state of our marriage. My jaw dropped, my mind racing to process what had just happened. I looked at her, at the wild fire burning in her eyes, and it hit me. This wasn't just about the phone or even about our intimacy issues. This was about a deep, unbridgeable gap between us that had been growing for a long time. My experiment had simply brought it to the surface. In that moment, I realized the harsh truth. Our relationship was beyond repair. I had tried to mend things, to open a line of communication, but it was clear that she wasn't willing to meet me halfway. So I did the only thing I could. "Sarah," I said, my voice calm despite the chaos inside me, "I think it's time we end this. I'll be contacting my lawyer." The shock that registered on her face told me she hadn't expected this, but I knew in my heart it was the right thing to do. My revenge experiment had turned out to be a wake-up call. It made me realize that love alone isn't enough to sustain a relationship. There needs to be respect, understanding, and communication, all of which were missing in our marriage. As I prepare for the impending court battles and the inevitable emotional turmoil, I look back at this whole episode with a strange sense of gratitude. It showed me what I deserved in a relationship and what I was missing out on. While the journey ahead is bound to be tough, I know it's a step towards a future where I can find genuine happiness, respect, and love. Update. Hello Reddit, it's John again. You might remember my previous post about the disintegration of my marriage and the impending court proceedings. Well, I thought it was about time I updated you all on what has transpired since then. It's been a few whirlwind months. I approached a highly recommended divorce attorney and filed for divorce. I braced myself for a long drawn-out battle, prepared for the worst. After all, divorces can be messy, complicated, and financially draining. However, to my surprise, the court proceedings went much smoother than expected. My lawyer was extremely efficient and helped me build a strong case. She used my wife's destructive act, destroying my phone, as a form of emotional distress, and that swung the case in my favor. In the end, the court ruled that I didn't have to pay any alimony. Moreover, I retained full ownership of our house and car, assets that we had bought together. To say I was relieved would be an understatement. What I'd feared would be a grueling process turned out to be relatively painless, and I felt a massive weight lifting off my shoulders. As for Sarah, she was left with no choice but to move back with her parents. They lived across the country, and she had to scramble to find a plane ticket. I admit I did feel a twinge of pity for her, but I reminded myself that we were both adults who had to face the consequences of our actions. A few days after Sarah left, I received a call. It was from her parents. I braced myself for a barrage of accusations and blame. However, what I heard was the complete opposite. They apologized to me. Yes, you heard it right. They apologized for their daughter's behavior. They expressed their regret about the whole situation and how it ended, acknowledging that Sarah should have handled things more maturely. They assured me that they held no ill will against me, a sentiment I reciprocated. It was an unexpected but welcome conversation that provided me some closure. So, here I am now, single and adjusting to this new phase of life. It's strange coming back to an empty home, but it's a reality I'm learning to accept. I do have moments of sadness and bitterness, but they are slowly fading away, replaced by a newfound sense of freedom and peace. Through this whole ordeal, I've learned that respect, communication, and understanding are as vital in a relationship as love. If one of these elements is missing, the relationship crumbles, no matter how much you try to hold on. So that's it, folks. That's my story. Hopefully my experience can help others who might be going through similar situations. Remember, it's never too late to stand up for yourself and demand what you deserve in a relationship. Don't be afraid to walk away if it's not working. In the end, your happiness and mental health are what matter the most. Good luck with the single life, John. And remember, for your next relationship, maybe stick to carrier pigeons. Less expensive to replace if thrown. What do you think? When you subscribe, be sure to click the notification bell. Click here for more Tangled threads.